microprocessor. That's our topic for today. Just underline that. Yeah. So let us just now concentrate on this one, because this is what we're going to cover. So it began in 1957. Fairchild Electronics was founded at that time. Now, there was use of vacuum diodes. They were the founders of ICs, whereby IC meaning integrated circuits, whereby they were first made in 1959. In 1968, three gentlemen resigned from Fairchild and founded Integrated Electronics. And that's where we get the term Intel. Intel meaning integrated electronics. So we can just write something. It began in 1957. Sorry. Oh, this is still on, really. Yeah. It began in 1957, whereby, I'm sorry, I'm trying to rush a bit. Fairchild Electronics was founded. Now, when you are dating back to the history of a microprocessor, you can see it started in 1957. So meaning in 1940s, it wasn't even there. They used vacuum diodes, okay? For our third point, we have, they were the founders. Okay, when I say they were the founders, I mean Fairchild Electronics, these ones. They were the founders of ICs. By ICs, I mean integrated circuits, okay? So Fairchild Electronics, they were the founders of ICs. And by IC, I mean, let me just write it for the beginners, integrated circuits, okay? Okay, what else? What else do I have to tell you? So, first we see microprocessor began in 1957. And now, during this time, Fairchild Electronics were trying to look into this new idea of it, and it took them time to finalize on their idea. So now, these integrated circuits were made in 1959, okay? They were first made in 1959. So then after this time, we have in 1963 gentlemen resigned from Fairchild. So these Fairchild Electronics were a group of people, and then some people drew back from the group and did some research on their own. So this was in the year in 1968, okay? 3 gentlemen resigned from Fairchild. And founded, and these were the ones who founded Integrated Electronics. And now that's where, when you look in your computers, there's that where they're Intel this, Intel this. So Intel meaning Integrated Electronics. I hope you're all following along. And electronics, integrated electronics, yeah. And by this is where you find the word Intel, yeah. So we are still in the history. Then we go to, after now, these 3 gentlemen found integrated electronics. What next? Where do they start in? Now, in 1971, Intel 4004 was found, or 4004, whatever you want to call it. So, in 1971, Intel 4004 was introduced. So we want to know about this first Intel to be introduced in the year 1971. So it was a first world microprocessor, which was a 4-bit programmable controller on a chip. Let me just write the program on a chip. Yeah. So we see that it could only program 4 bits. That is what they said. It could only do 4 bits. Yeah. So, how do I have it here? Chip. Anyway, let's move forward. What else? It will address a mere 4096 4-bit wide memory location. So 4-bit wide memory location, you all know that. It weighed, okay, I can say it contained a set of only 45 instructions with this reception. Okay. It contains a set of only 45 instructions. Okay. Reception speed of 50,000 instructions per second. It contains a set of only 45 instructions with a reception speed of 55,000 instructions per second. You can just put this here. 1,000 instructions per second. Yeah. What next? It weighed less than an ounce. Okay. It means it wasn't that heavy, but you know, 1 ounce is equivalent to about 2.5 kilograms. So yeah, you can estimate the weight from that. Yeah. It had 2,300 transistors made of MOSFETs, which is PMOS MOSFET technology. I can just write that down, though it's not that important because later on, Intel released an Intel 8008 to us now, which was 8-bit version of 4004. As we all remember, I've told you that Intel 4004 was a 4-bit. So later on, you can put here comma Intel released Intel 8008, which was an 8-bit version of 4004. So we can just see that they were like the same thing, but this one at least it could transmit 8 bits. Yeah. So after they have developed this 8008, we can talk of its memory size and the number of instructions. So it was almost the same as 4004, but there was a difference in the number of bits. This one transmitted 8 bits, and it also had a memory size of 16 kilobytes. Yeah, and it will transmit 48 instructions with only 48 instructions. I'm sorry. So it contained a set of 48 instructions. The other one, we talked about 4004 having a set of 45 instructions, but 8008 we found out it had a set of 48 instructions, which is at least higher than the other one, but it is not so different. So we can say memory size was a set of 48 instructions. Yeah. So next we are going to look at the drawbacks, because every time they develop a new technology, we have to see that what went wrong with this one and why we need another version of it, or why we need to update it or advance it or improve the previous version. It means that it wasn't that perfect, and we have to look at the drawbacks of the ones that were there before. Yes. So we continue. Main drawbacks. I'll just tab it in and underline this. Main drawbacks of the two. We have one. Of course, when we are dealing with a microprocessor, you know, a microprocessor needs to have enough speed so that the instructions we send to it can be able to be executed at a faster rate, so that you can save on time. And also storage, we have to look at the storage, we have to look at the speed, we have to look at the memory size, you know. Yeah. So at the drawbacks, we see that it had slow speed of 74 kilohertz. And you know, the speed of the microprocessor is determined by the clock speed. Yeah. If you haven't covered about clocking, you can search it up anywhere online, you'll find it. But the speed of the microprocessor was 740 kilohertz, which is very slow. So hereby we see that instructions weren't executed as fast as we wanted them to be transmitted. So number one, we have slow speed of 740 kilohertz. Two, small word width. Okay. Small word width. By this, we mean that, you know, the size of the data bus. Okay, I haven't covered data bus yet, but from the 4004, we saw that it transmits 4 bits, and it was a 4-bit microprocessor, and 8008 was an 8-bit. So for the 4004, the word width was 4 bits. For the 8008, the word width was 8 bits, which is still small. So we had to advance from that. We have to increase on the word width on the next Intel. Okay, integrated electronics. Number 3, small memory size. Yeah, I think that is self-explanatory. Let's go to the following one. Limited instruction sets. Yeah, that is a very major drawback. Limited. Okay, so for the 4004, we saw that it had 45 sets of instructions, and for the 8008, we saw that it had 48 sets of instructions, and that is not yet enough for, you know, on a daily basis, microprocessor executes a wide range of instructions, so we need a larger instruction set for our operations. Okay, so next I'm going to cover Intel 8080, because remember in 1971 is when we were brought the Intel 4004. Now let's just scroll down. Now we are heading to the year 1974. Okay, in 1974 we introduced another Intel. Okay, another Intel was introduced. So Intel introduced special processors, which was Intel 4040 and Intel 8080. Intel introduced, let me just write this down first, then special. You can put this here and just write this in bold. They introduced Intel 4040 and Intel 8080. Okay. I wanted to. Okay, so we can see the progress. There were updated versions of the previous ones. Okay. Okay, and they could execute instructions 4 times faster. Imagine. So we can just use this. This meaning this one here means and. Okay, and they could execute instructions 10 times faster. Okay, so that's where we are at. We can just put here so that we don't get that red line over there. We'll still get the green one anyway. So okay, so the memory address increased by 4 to 64 kilobytes. You can imagine the improvements. So the memory increased to 64 kilobytes. Okay. It was compatible with the logic interfacing. Had about Okay, it had about 600 transistors with a clock speed of 2 megahertz. And before, on the drawbacks of the previous one, we see that the clock speed was 74 kilohertz. I mean, sorry, 740 kilohertz. And this one here, we see that the clock speed is in megahertz, like 2 megahertz. That's a huge improvement. It means that instructions could be executed more faster. Okay. Okay, so about that one had how many transistors? If someone can remember, I talked about it. It had 2,300 transistors. This one has the ones I'm discussing have 6,000 transistors. You can imagine, and a clock speed of 2 megahertz. The other one clock speed was at 740 kilohertz. Okay, so 2,300 transistors. So we move on to the ones that are more knowledgeable to you guys. We get to Intel 8085. Should I? Okay, can do that and underline Intel 8085. Okay, so this one is an 8-bit microprocessor. It was introduced by Intel in the year 1976. So it took 2 years from the previous ones for this one to be able to be made, to be able to be produced. So it had an 8-bit data. When we say an 8-bit microprocessor, from that word 8-bit microprocessor, you get to know the size of the data bus, 8-bit data bus and a 16-bit address bus. It will execute 246 instructions, of which it's a very, very, very large improvement from the first ones, which were 45 and 48 instruction sets. So this one will execute 246 instructions and around 6,000. It had around 6,500 transistors. The main advantage of 8085 is that it was fitted with an internal clock generator, and it had an internal system controller at a higher clock frequency. And you know, when you have a higher clock frequency, it affects the speed of the microprocessor, therefore making execution of instructions to be faster. Okay, so let me just write that down. Then we go forward. For those writing notes, I'm going to sort you out. Okay, my notes are just summarized. Okay, introduced by Intel in the year 1976. So we see the clock speed. The clock speed for this one is 3 megahertz, which is such a huge improvement. Okay. It had an 8-bit. Okay, can you see that already? An 8-bit data. Okay, and 16-bit address bus. Yeah. Okay, that's okay. It had 246. It will execute 246 instructions. So it had 246 instructions and around 6,500 transistors. Okay, I'm sorry for this one. So memory address was 64 kilobytes. Okay, let's try that. And can you guess how many instructions it will execute per second? Remember, 4004 will execute 50,000 instructions per second. 50,000 for the first Intel per second. This one could execute 765,000 instructions per second. Can you imagine? So 65,000 per second. Can you guess the main advantage of this 8085 is that it was fitted with an internal clock generator, and it had an internal system controller and a higher clock frequency. So we can just write that down, and you know, when it has a higher clock speed, as I've said before a number of times, it means it can execute instructions at a higher speed. the speed of the microprocessor is very much related to the clock speed. Okay, so if the clock speed is high, therefore the speed of the microprocessor is also high. So the main advantage of 8085 is that it, if you can just scroll down, is that it could execute. So the first I'm going to say it was fitted with an internal clock generator, and it fed an let's try this in small. Yeah. I just write that down, then I can talk after. For a nanosecond, 2.5 mega. Let me just say this: 8086 plus 16 bits data bus. We can say both 8086 and 8088. The address is 20 bits and can access 1 megabyte. Two to the power n meaning the number of address bus, you get the amount of memory locations or memory address space that can be covered by a given microprocessor. So if these have 20 bits address bus, the memory address or the memory locations covered by this is 1 megabyte. Okay. I hope okay, if I've written that in capital, I need to do the same for this. It's all about the memory locations. Okay. Slightly over 20,000 instructions could be executed by 8086 and 8088, and they can multiply and divide directly. Had a small byte instruction queue referred to as cache, which was used to prefetch few instructions before execution. So you know cache, or some people say cache, it kind of stores some of the instructions, the memory of the instructions that you previously inputted into your device or your appliance or whatever. It takes it without your permission or any device, so that is cache, it just stores it. So when you are executing let's say you are executing an instruction which requires some instructions from cache, it takes that instructions from cache before it executes it. So cache, I can say cache is good in that it speeds up execution, in that you don't have to repeat everything. For example, in your phone, when you had typed something, it remains in the memory. That is cache. So the next time when you are writing the same sentence, it offers you how to finish that statement, and that helps in saving time, since you can just tap on the suggested words and finish up that statement. You see, so that is collected before execution. So what I'm trying to explain, let me just write it. Okay. Just 20,000 is done. Will be executed we finished up on the history of the microprocessor. So in the next lesson, we are going to cover definition of terms. That is, like, we're going to explain what is a microprocessor, what is a CPU, what is a computer. Then we are going to cover the components of a computer, because all of these are brought to relevance to us because of a computer. That's where we're going to cover CPU, memory unit, input unit, output units, and I'm going to draw for you the structure. We're going to look at the subblocks of CPU. Then we'll finish that in the next lesson. Now the other lesson, we'll be covering computer architecture. Yes. And then from there we go from then on covering pin configuration and everything. But so far, I hope you've understood. And yeah, you can just share anything down here in the comment section. Yes.